My goodness, the fan base of Hunter x Hunter is almost as clever as Togashi, and people actually figured this out. Beyond is our Sosuke Aizen of Hunter x Hunter, and this guy has been planning this trip for over 50 years. Hey, what's going on, fellas? This is Critical J-Man reporting to you live once again. Today, I have an interesting for you. We're just going to be exploring a couple of theories that have been popping up around the community, and a lot of these, honestly, have been theories that have already been established for quite some time, but to me, due to some of the recent chapters that we have going on, carry a little more relevance. So, without further ado, we're going to don our critical thinking Hunter x Hunter cap and get right into the meat of this business. Starting at number 1, we're going to talk about Morena Prudo and the possibility of her having a Nen after death ability. Morena Prudo, ever since her introduction, seems to have a very well thought out plan, even though she operates a lot like the troop, where it's just like, hey, here's a vague idea, go do it. She's clearly well thought out, and she has something up her sleeve, some kind of ace. Otherwise, what is all this mindless violence going to lead towards? And we actually poked at some of these questions with some of the latest chapters, with the troop members talking to the mafiosos about pretty much this same idea. So the idea of her having a post-Nen ability is something that spawned from, quite simply, her crown of thorns. Who else wore a crown of thorns and was referenced as a biblical figure? Jesus himself. Jesus wore a crown of thorns, and he was considered a martyr of sorts. Morena seems to be almost on the right track of herself. She could be a martyr, and in doing so releases a Nen after death ability. What this could do, we don't know. All we can assume is might have something to do with her current ability, Contagion. And how Contagion works is once you hit level 100, you gain Member 0 status, which allows you to start your own Contagion. Pretty strong little ability. So the idea is that when she does die, all the people in her current Contagion area, all of her members in that current pact, are going to gain level 100 status and will become Member 0 themselves and be able to start their own Contagion wave. Considering we're on a boat, and the main goal of the High whatever, her family, is to just spread absolute death and destruction of everything, this is not looking good for the boat. This will certainly be something really interesting to see going forward. We have a chapter coming up this weekend. I could be proven wrong about a lot of this. Anyway, moving forward, the number 2 spot, we have what is going on with the 9th spot in the Phantom Troop. So with the latest chapter, we had Spondylena poke at the idea that the 9th spot of the troop is vacant, and everybody knows why. Also him alluding to the masquerade ending, the performance ending, which suggests that the troop itself is ending. Now, none of this is definitive, and it has been going around for a little bit, but the idea is that Pakunoda has been the 9th spot, and it's vacant because Pakunoda is one and only Chrollo's love interest, and vice versa. The whole idea of that being a love interest for Chrollo, and it being a little suspicious about it being vacant and why the two could be connected, is grieving seems to be a heavy part of Chrollo's character. When we lost Uvo, we literally had a requiem of death going about. And even before we lost Uvo, he read the poem, and the poem suggested what was going to happen, to which he cried. So, in that regard, Chrollo was grieving. Again, after Hisoka took out Kortupi and Shalnark just before the boat launched, and then Chrollo found out about it, we get this grievous-looking panel where someone quite literally comes up to him and says, hey, what's the matter, buddy? You look like you're ready to kill somebody. Chrollo grieving is a huge part of his character, but we haven't seen him grieve over Pakunoda, and I don't think any of the troop has either. So that being said, that is an area that hasn't been explored, and it could lead to them actually being in love with each other, and that this is pretty much the last hurrah for the troop, is that Hisoka is the last person that's pissed off the troop, and he needs to go. In order for the troop to go, we need to take care of all the loose ends. Hisoka's the last loose end. But before I keep going on about the loose end idea, I just want to wrap up the Pakunoda, which was a really neat comment that came out from a Redditor that pretty much pointed out that the finalized volume that Togashi released with the troop backstory from the latest batch of chapters, he added an extra page. And it might not seem like much, but it's Pakunoda talking about a vow that she makes where she will never touch the person that she cares about the most. Seems small, but the page appears to be transparent and shows on the other side a panel of Crollo, again suggesting of love interest between the two. Moving back over to Hisoka, the idea is that Crollo has been in so much suffering since the loss of Sarasa, and same thing with the troop. He cares deeply about the troop, so he's trying to eliminate each and every single obstacle that's ever tried to do the troop wrong, and hopefully Hisoka is the last one. But again, he's a master writer. We'll see where this leads to us. We're going to jump right into the next one, which I just want to give is a honorable mention. It's something that's already been confirmed true, but I just wanted to poke at it for a quick second because, my goodness, the fan base of Hunter x Hunter is almost as clever as Togashi with being able to figure this out. Back when we had Hisoka revealed to us for the first time in the previous batch of chapters, it turns out with the latest chapter, he was not Hisoka, and it was actually Bonolenov. And people actually figured this out from context clues, which is absurd. I don't know how people can even see this, but it's beautiful that we have such a fan base that does this. Pretty much amongst a lot of the ideas that were pitched of why this was true, one of the big ones was the movie theater that he meets Henrig in is playing the movie The Thing, which is about a paranormal entity that takes the shape or form of something, but it isn't actually that something. Ba-ba-ba-bam. And the other is he never directly really answers anybody. They are like, hey, are you Soka? He just kind of stares at him. He's like, who's asking? You asking? Who's asking? Because I'm not going to give you a direct answer. Same thing with Henrik. He comes in the theater. He's like, you're Ahsoka, right? He just stares at him. Moving on. I just wanted to give that one an honorable mention because that was crazy. The fans even came up with that theory, and it actually turned out to be true. The last one I'm touching base on is kind of a loaded gun here, but it's a fun one that's kind of been explored before, but to me has gained relevancy with some of the latest additions, namely the involving of Beyond having illegitimate children, and one of those illegitimate children actually being one of the princes potentially. So this next one pretty much is just playing off of the idea that Beyond is our Sosuke Aizen of Hunter x Hunter, and this guy has been planning this trip for over 50 years. Long-term big boy plays. Now, what I'm touching on is the plan where a popular idea that Beyond actually planted the ants for the Chimera Ant arc to happen so that way Isaac Netero would die, therefore removing the restriction for him to go to the Dark Continent and he could sail away to the nice little place. That one's pretty fun if you get to explore it because of all the small things. One, the queen's anatomy resembles that of a human. Her teeth, her shape, her form, it literally resembles that of a woman. How she's able to give birth to other subjects is reminiscent of a woman as well. But the idea is that they pretty much mated Chimera ants with a bunch of females in order to create a queen. And then they took this queen and they planted her in such an inconspicuous area so that way when nobody noticed the colony's growth in the growth of the queen and the potential birth of the king. Here's where it gets kind of fun. They, at one point, Gon Freaks and Kilo are hanging around with Kite, and Kite is just chilling there, and they're like, hey, Kite, what are you doing here anyway? And Kite says this in the Chimera Ant arc, before we really know what's going on here. He says, oh, I was sent by the Kakin Empire to do a biological study on new species. Kakin Empire, who's from the Kakin Empire, we got Beyond. The Kakin Empire sent Kite, a hunter, to an area to discover new species where he just so happens to discover the arm of the Chimera Ant Queen, discovers her existence, and when he realizes the calamity that is going to happen, she's already well on her way developing guards, and the royal guards, and a ton of other subjects, and they're already nestled in NGL where it's a perfect cloak for them to keep growing. Long story short, everybody knows what's happened in the Chimera Ant arc. It got so bad to a point that the king has spawned. It literally hit the fan. Stuff has hit the fan, and they had to bring in literally the chief among chiefs, Netero himself, and he had to come in there and deal with business, and we all saw what happened to him. Rest in peace. All this carefully orchestrated by both Beyond and Pariston in order to impair, pretty much ultimately kill Netero, so that way they could hop on the train and get to the Dark Continent. Really interesting, well-elaborated plan, and it's crazy to think that Beyond planned all of this. Last little one that I'm talking about here that I'm just touching base with that little strand of the Chimera Ant arc is the last line that we hear Netero say to Meruem. When he's down on his last peg and he looks like a withered up old man, he still strikes fear into the heart of Meruem by saying one beautiful line: "You know nothing of the bottomless malice within the human heart." This, with the revelation of both Beyond having a illegitimate children and potentially a prince being his child, pokes at the idea, and I mean, let's face it, he's got to be. Look at this guy. He's got to be Beyond's child. He's got to be a child of the Netero genes, because Tserriednich is an absolute lunatic. His dedication, his appearance, how driven he is with doing just one thing in particular, the man is crazy. But I mention all that because the malice that he states, perhaps Netero did in fact know. Perhaps Isaac really did know that Beyond already had a child, Tserriednich, and he carried such malice in his heart, and that was a reference to Tserriednich. A lot to unpack, a lot of different theories, but I figured it would just be pretty fun to explore some of these in case you haven't heard them before. I hope you enjoyed listening to this little batch of just me rambling about some crazy goon shenanigans that we got going on. But if you liked anything, or especially how we got the audio to work finally, we're looking at you left-ear subscribers, please leave a comment, a note, anything you'd like, subscribe, and let me know how we did and if any of those caught your interest. Or share your own ideas. Thank you all for tuning in once again. This is Critical J-Man, and I am reporting out.